Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Night Transformation. I am Pastor Des, and it is a blessing to be with you this evening. Please take a moment to go ahead and drop in the chat where you are joining us from, so we can say hello. If it's your first time joining us for TNT, please also let us know. We are happy and grateful to have you. Hi, Latanya. Welcome to November. Yes, it is November 1st. So glad to see you here. Geraldine from Harlem. Me too. I'm in Harlem. Good evening, Peggy. It's good to see you. It's good to see. It's a blessing to be with each and every one of you tonight. So we're just going to give folks like another minute or so to join, and then we're going to go ahead and get started with you this evening. Again, thank you for joining us. It's a blessing to be here with you, and looking forward to chatting with you around speaking up, using your voice, and all other things pertaining to the sermon this past Sunday. So again, let me know where you are joining us from. Say hello, so we know that you are with us, and we will go ahead and get started. Okay, we are going to go ahead and pray, and then we will. Hi, Lorianne. How are you? Hi, Tammy from the Bronx. Good to see you. Let's go ahead and pray, and then we will get started. God, we thank you. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the individuals gathered. For Tuesday Night Transformation, God, because that is what it is meant to be, a place in a space that transforms us, God. And we know that you can do transformative work no matter where we are. That's our physical location. You can do anything from, but you can also do it from whatever our heart posture is, our mind posture is, our emotional posture, that you truly are a God of transformative work. So today, God, we are looking forward to some transformation taking place, God. We are grateful for the seeds that are going to be planted today, that even if they are not harvested today, God, that we know that when we put seed into soil in good ground, God, that we will reap the harvest when it is due time. So we are grateful today. We are excited, and it is in your name we pray. Amen. 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 Hey, Jesse. Hey, Regina. Hey, Jacqueline. Good to see you all this evening. Today, we are going to be talking a little bit about the sermon from this past Sunday that was entitled Speak Up. Speak Up. If you didn't know, the Dream Center celebrated its 10th anniversary this past Sunday. And so, as part of that Sunday, one, happy anniversary, Dream Center. Great job to Morgan Cuffey and the entire team over at the Dream Center for the very great work that they did this past Sunday and over the entire weekend. As many of you know, for 9.5 years, I served as the executive visionary at the Dream Center, but transitioned all the way pretty much to the church side in June of this year. So again, great job to the team over at the Dream Center for all of the work that they continue to do. And yes, so the theme for the service was Speak Up. And so Pastor Mike came from the scripture, and you can look at it if you didn't, from Proverbs 15:14. Proverbs 15:14 in the Message Bible. Good evening, Mario. Good to see you. Look forward to seeing you in LA next week. Proverbs 15:4. Kind words heal and help. Cutting words wound and maim. Yes, kind words heal and help. Cutting words wound and maim. And so Pastor Mike went on to talk about the power of our words, right? The power of what we say. And we know this, right? We know that life and death is in the power of the tongue. We know that that what we say and what comes out of our mouth has the potential to do great harm, but also to heal, as Pastor Mike spoke about on Sunday. And we also know what it means to be on the other side of people's words, whether those were affirmative words that made us feel great about ourselves and ushered us out of a place of darkness, but also those words that injured and hurt us, that ushered us into a place, in a space of darkness. And I know I'm not the only one who can attest to the fact that there are words that we still remember to this day that someone may have said to us 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years ago, that it's almost as if they ring in our ears as if someone said them yesterday. So we absolutely know the power of our words. But even in knowing what the power of our words, it doesn't often stop us from saying the things that we feel we need to say, and knowing that it doesn't often stop other people from saying what they have to say to you. And I think often it's because we don't see always the damage of our words, or people don't see the damage that the words impose on us, right? If someone punches us in the face, if someone does something physical to us, if they harm us in a physical way, there is a physical bruise or something that is left there. Sometimes it leaves a scar, sometimes it doesn't, but there is physical evidence of the injury that we have incurred, or the injury that we have put onto another person. But when it is often our words, we don't often see the emotional and the woundedness of that thing. And especially if someone like with myself, if your outer affect doesn't always match your inner countenance, meaning how you feel isn't always expressed on your face, if you have a deadpan face, if you're often stoic, if people can't always sense how you feel, then oftentimes people, they can negate your feelings, or that something injured you at all. Oh, that didn't really bother so-and-so. Then harm them because they didn't see the physical affect on the outside of you doing that. Or oftentimes we may not even speak up and say anything when someone's injured us. So oftentimes it's not clear to people that they've injured us or they've hurt us. And yes, fact, Jacqueline, is your face like mine? Or they don't want to see, Lorianne, regardless, whatever the case may be, the people don't want to see, they can't see it, or for whatever reason, they are unable to kind of process the damage that they have done to us. And again, not that we're always the person who is in the place of being victimized by words. Some of us are often harming other people, whether intentionally or unintentionally, often how we say things, because we know it's not just about what we're saying to people. There are so many other things that come into play. Remember, tone is everything, right? So how we say something, how we convey that message. And in such a digital world, often our words expand what we actually say, because some of us are quick with those fingers on social media, over text message. And oftentimes we might say or respond to people in ways that we would never do if we were face to face with them, right? We get that little extra courage because there's a computer screen, or there's a phone, but there are ways in which people would never respond to us if they were in front of us, or that we would never respond to them if we were in front of them. And so it's not just about what we say with our mouths, but also what we type and how we respond to people. In any of those ways are definitely an outshoot. It says, as a man or woman thinketh, so they are. So the things that we say and the way in which we do it, it matters. Yes, from the comfort of our own homes, Lorianne, even further, with strangers, right? If you follow me on social media, then you know I'm not a big social media person. I have my moments where I do, but often you're going to see my kids or like something related to FCBC or work, not very much about me. But I am mortified often at how much commentary people have about strangers' lives. And some people might argue back and forth with me, oh, it's social media. It's supposed to be social, but social doesn't mean that it has to be harmful or damaging. I have watched, especially in the past few weeks, how people have just spewed venom, as Pastor Mike likened our words. It's not the snake bite that kills, right? It is the venom that is spread, and you just spread it, and then it's just there. And once it's out, you cannot take it. You cannot take it back. And so that idea that we have to be mindful of what we say and how we say it. Let's see, Thais, you said no matter the tone or the context, people are always offended by something I say because of the standard they hold me to. What can I do about that? So first, let's do a couple of things, right? Let's first consider that if we're hearing something from multiple people, right, that we can't be so quick to say, right, that it's the other people. If multiple people, no matter how your tone and your context is, that they're getting offended by what you say, you have to consider that there is something that may be in the way that we're saying it that causes that, whether we mean it or not. Because often we look at our intent or our heart, where I didn't mean it that way, but it's still conveying in a particular manner. So if you're hearing that over and over again, I know I've heard that. I've heard it plenty of times. I have to consider how I am responding to people and in what way. Right. So we have to be able to look at ourselves first and do that assessment of, okay, there has to be something here that perhaps I am doing, whether I intended or not, that is coming across this way. But yes, again, people's standard of perfection for you or how they may assume that you should respond to them or do, that's on them, right? We can only do our work, which is how we choose to respond and what we do. We can't always control how people take it, but we also control how we, our posture when someone does come to us to let us know that we've offended them. Are you apologetic? Are you defensive? How you apologize. I'm sorry that I did this. I'm sorry that it made you feel, instead of just saying, I apologize, for the injury. Because the reality is that feelings are not fact, right? But feelings are real, regardless of whether they should get offended or not, whether it makes sense if someone gets offended or not. Regardless of those things, the person's feelings are real. Whether they make sense or not to you, they are real. And so we can sit in that for whatever reason, because of that person's experience or context, they got offended. We can maybe apologize from that place or show a posture of humility. Now, that's not always the case 100% of the time. Because there have been times when I've had to just call people to the carpet, but that is not all of the time. So we just have to be mindful of that. Veronica, you said you've learned to mind your business and shut your mouth. And right, there is a time and place for that, right? But there is also a time when we should speak up. And that is what Pastor Mike talked to. So many of us, because of our backgrounds and our experience, don't feel like we have the agency to use our voice. And so you asserting yourself, or you sharing what you feel, or your voice has value. So that doesn't mean that you should be quiet all the time. It doesn't mean that if this is going to ruffle some feathers, I shouldn't say it. But one, you should think about the context of what you're saying, and does it have the potential to heal or to harm? Now, again, that healing and harming does not just extend to the person who you're speaking to. It also extends to yourself. If by our saying these words, getting this out, expressing this thing, setting up a boundary, speaking up, going to cause healing for me, because it helps me to set a like you said, Thais, a standard for how people can treat me or do it, then it's not just extended to what you're saying to other people or how, but what it does to you. And as Pastor Mike said, oftentimes we speak so negatively to ourselves about who we are. We have most of our conversation is that inner dialogue that nobody sees. And so our ability to kind of adjust and speak to ourselves more kindly and with grace, having compassionate conversations with ourselves. And if we're not used to doing that, it is really difficult. And sometimes I think I had that battle Sunday after the sermon, where I'm in my house and I am battling with the negative thoughts in my head, but also be reminded of Pastor Mike's sermon, and had to speak. It was like a versus battle in my head between what the negative thoughts and the positive thoughts. And then I had to call on some friends. I have a little group writing chat, and I had to be like, hey, I need some help. And they sent encouraging words, and we kind of worked on it together. And I was able to combat what was going on in my head. But it took all of that. It took all of 6 people to help me combat the voice in my head. And I know all of you know, or some of you may know what that feels like. Regina, you said you started practicing what Pastor Mike said to do. When I feel I'm about to blurt something out, I say pause. Yes, we are going to get to that in a minute. That was the main thing that I wanted to speak about tonight, but I just wanted to give context for those who did not have the opportunity maybe to watch the sermon. But we are going to talk and spend the most of our time tonight about on that pause part. Let's see. Peggy, some of your comment cut off, so if you can put it back. Oh, okay, there you go. You did it. You did. So Geraldine, you said, my brilliant grandmother often said, be careful what you say with that little red piece of leather. Your words will either help or hurt. And that's what Pastor Mike said. Yes. And what if all of us just considered, is this going to hurt or is this going to harm? Right. But oftentimes, and I'm a victim of it too, not a victim. I do it too, where we're so quick to respond, so quick to jump in, so quick to interrupt that we don't even allow any space for something to be said differently or nothing to be said at all. Geraldine, one of the things I've also practiced with very difficult conversations or things where I knew, because if you know Desiree Simone Elder, it takes nothing for me to slice and dice. I don't even think I like cut you down to the quick. Like I don't ever even need to fight because I can boop, 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 real quick. So oftentimes, because I start getting a little petty labelle sometimes, I will write it down. If I'm going into a difficult conversation, I may process and stop. I may have to make sure that I'm not dealing in emotion. Sometimes I have written things down so that when I go into the conversation, I am only working from these points. This is what I want to say. Everything else, no. I have taken notes while I'm having a conversation with somebody. Don't put the Junius, why are you going to put Petty LaBelle all big on the screen for everybody to see? See, you see what happens, how he came for me? But yes, yes. I've learned to try to employ some other methods to help me not act in the lower version of myself that is always on the ready. Peggy, you said I've learned we said that. I learned if I can't speak my mind, I usually keep my mouth shut. If I feel the person can't accept it, I write it down and give it to God. Now, I want to challenge that a bit because again, it is not about whether the person accepts it or not. It is just like if I decide to set a boundary. If I say, if you continue to talk to me this way, then I'm going to do A, B, or C. If I don't ever set a boundary, for instance, if I don't say anything, it is not enough for me to just write it down and give it to God. There are moments when our courage, right, and what God might be actually requiring of us is to speak up, especially if our natural tendency is to shrink back and not say anything because we are conflict averse, right? And so if you are a person who is conflict averse, like in professionally, I'm not really conflict averse, but sometimes personally, depending on the relationship, if I don't want to ruffle feathers, I'm just not going to say nothing. I'm going to just hold it in. But that doesn't often get you anywhere because all it does is all of it sits on the inside of you. You can grow bitter. You can grow angry. And so sometimes you have to practice, even in very small ways, speaking up. You know, it really bothered me when you did A, B, or C. Right. I really, and you speak it and it's not about whether the other person accepts it or not, because often any of us are capable of acting in defense. And when we feel defensive or we haven't done anything, or we feel like we haven't done anything, they may never accept it, right? But it's not about whether they accept it or not. In those moments, it is about you practicing actively, speaking up and using your voice. If you are speaking truth in the best way that you can, in a way, because if you're doing that, you're not trying to harm, right? You're trying to heal. Maybe you're trying to reconcile or repair. Maybe you care about the relationship and you don't want to see it moving down a certain trajectory. So you're going to speak up for the sake of yourself. And sometimes you have to practice that in small ways. Because I would legit be the one in something small. Has anyone ever done this? You go to like the hairdresser, or you go to a restaurant and you don't really like the food, or you don't like how they prepared it, but you don't want to offend, so you don't say anything. Or you go and you're getting your hair done and you paid good money, and You don't say anything if you don't like the cut or the style, or if you go get a haircut and they messed up this side, don't match this side, but you don't say anything. All of those ways in which we just like, oh, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Those are little ways in which we can practice speaking up, and just saying like, hey, like, can you just line this up so it's even, because I'm paying my money for that. But there are ways in which we can constantly do that. Yes, Thais, feelings are not facts, right? They are not. What I feel, I can get angry because somebody passed the salt the wrong way and I burst into tears and I feel offended, I feel hurt, I feel angry. My feelings are real. They may not be logical, right? There's times when I'm like, I'm mad. I don't even know why this thing made me mad. I can recognize, and my therapist has helped me a lot. I can recognize that just because it's not logical, right, doesn't diminish the feeling, whether it's your feeling or somebody else's. It doesn't make it fact. It doesn't make it true. But often what people want to do is feel heard, right? I share this in premarital counseling when we talk about communication. I like reality TV, and one of the things I like very much is I like Marriage Boot Camp, and they give these rules for engagement and communication. And one of the things is LUV: listen, understand, and validate. So the point is that when someone says something to you, listen. Then to make sure you understand, you repeat it back to them. What I heard you say was A, B, C, D, E. Is that correct? And they could either be like, yep, that's correct, or not correct. And then you validate that. Thank you so much for sharing how you feel. I really appreciate that. You don't have to fix it. Sometimes people just want to know that you hear them. And sometimes I've had to even enter into conversations. My mom's a coach, right? So for a living, she always want to help people all the time. If you tell her something, she's trying to fix it. So there have been times when I have to go into a conversation with my mom and be like, hey, I just need you to listen. Or I don't want you to try to fix this. Because sometimes if you try to fix it, I'll be mad. Because that's not what I wanted. I just wanted to feel heard. I wanted to vent. I wanted to be in my despair. I wanted to be angry for 3 minutes. Like, don't try to jump me to joy, right? So those are some things. You're right, Tanisha. I'm sorry, but isn't an apology. It's a defense. And it's a really hard, it's actually hard to practice the notion of just saying, if someone's like, you hurt me you punched me in the face and you hurt me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I hurt you. Or I'm sorry if you felt this way. Like, sometimes again, it's not always about whether you agree or not. My former pastor, who's I guess still one of my pastors, she says, would you rather be right or reconciled? So sometimes I have to think, do I want to be right? Or do I want to be reconciled with this person? So it doesn't always mean that you're going to agree with whatever their thing is, but being able to apologize. Now, that doesn't mean you just take responsibility for everything, but sometimes it requires that from us. Veronica, I've learned to use my tone with certain people and say things that will not hurt them. I use words to heal, not hurt. Congratulations. I'm still working on it. I am still working on it, especially my email tone. It is the worst. You find yourself being silenced a lot because of the way you comment or the input that's received. Thais, I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. Can you put a little bit, type a little bit more about what you mean about being silenced because of is it the way that you're saying you comment or because of your input? So let's chat about that. AQ, yes, internal toxic sludge is a good way to put it. Geraldine, don't call it reading, but yes, we can definitely read some folks. Fact, Lorianne, you said, I used to keep it all in, but it can make you sick. Yes, it can make you sick. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score. And all our stress, all the things that we do, all the things that we hold in, it plays out, physiologically and in our bodies. And so oftentimes when we just hold, and we know that we're doing that, it is It does do that. But one of the things that has helped me is that you do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm, meaning you don't have to take in every single thing all the time, like the landfill, and take all people's junk and trash so that they can feel better. That's not your job. That's not your role. Veronica, sometimes painful words can heal. It depends if the person is ready to accept what you are saying. Correct. But we, again, cannot control whether a person accepts it or not, or if they are in that place. So all we can do is be mindful of what we're saying and how we say it. And again, understanding we're not going to do that 100% right all of the time, right? Thais, you find yourself yourself being angry and bitter because you held in so many things you didn't express or speak on. Yes. So it's a fine balance, because sometimes we feel like we should say something and it's not the place or time. One of the other things that I've learned is like unsolicited advice, right? Advice given in the wrong time, in the wrong season, when someone didn't ask, even if it's right, even if it's what you experience, isn't helpful. Right. So I've tried to learn to either, and I don't, again, do it 100% of the time, to see if someone's asking me for their advice, or ask them, may I say something, or may I give you some advice, without just being like, all right, here's what you need to do. Because that's not helpful. And that may not actually be what the person is asking of you. And we also have to learn in our communication sometimes to be better articulate what we need. I need, you to listen, or I'm coming to you for advice. Because nobody's a mind reader. And sometimes people are just doing their best to support you, but they may not know what you need in that moment. Yes, you said, Veronica, it took you a long time, but your therapist helped you with this and your 3 children. You said things that hurt them and you had no idea that you hurt them. Yes, as parents, we say things, and I am learning a lot about with my children. If you want to talk about read, a child will read you. And I don't know, I would, my kids are always, because they've learned to use what they call they express their big feelings. So they will say if they're angry, they will say if they're upset. If you've ever been in a room with Mia and Naya, you know that they will tell you what they feel and what they are thinking. And they will call me to the carpet. Mommy, why? Last week, I think I shared it on prayer, and I had picked them up, but I was frustrated from something at work. So I was a little grouchy. And so I was a little snappy. And my daughter Naya was like, Mommy, why are you acting like that? You are not even being yourself. And you're not being so kind right now. Now, some people, right, would be like, that's a child and they're being disrespectful, and they would have shut her down. But she wasn't wrong. And so what do I teach her? If I'm like, oh, hush, your child, you don't know what you're talking about. No, I was snappy. I was bitey. She had not done anything because I had just picked her up. And so instead of being like, I paused. I heard what she had to say. I had to filter through the fact that she is 5. And I'm like, oh, my mom probably would pop me. And then I had to be like, you know what, baby, you are absolutely right. Mommy had a very rough day. I'm frustrated, but you did nothing. I apologize for that. Can you forgive me? And so learning to kind of do that and acknowledging that. And my kids teach me, your kids teach you a lot about listening, because I'll be like, ooh, yeah, they will tell you everything. So with that, I do want to talk about a part that was close to the end of the sermon that Pastor Mike talked about. He kind of talked about the notion of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But the larger point was the need to pause, right? The need to just pause. There are a lot of ways that we can pause in the midst of a conversation. There are a lot of ways that we can pause, and so that we do not say things that we don't mean. So I want to give you another scripture that you can go back and read at another time for some spiritual context. Then I'll give you some tangible context too, and then I'd love for you to speak up to. So in 1 Kings 19, and if you were on prayer last week, I think too bad because I spoke about this, but it fits. See, look at God bringing it back around because someone has to hear it. But in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 11 through 13, basically Elijah, the prophet Elijah, is on the run from Jezebel. And Elijah is having a conversation with God. And God says, he's on Mount Horeb. God tells Elijah to go to the top of the mountain because the Lord is going to speak. It's so weird because God is speaking about God's self in third person, like, go to the mountain. I'm going to speak to you, even though I'm already speaking to you. But anyway, God says, go stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. So Elijah goes up to the mountain waiting for God to pass by. And it says, there's a great wind that comes. So it's a great wind that is so strong that it splits the mountains and breaks the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But it says, but the Lord wasn't in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake, but God wasn't in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice came. So Elijah expected the voice of God, or for God to be in the wind and the earthquake and the fire. But God was not in any of that. It was the silence. It was the pause. And after the pause, God spoke. And so often for many of us, we don't allow the pause. We don't allow the pause in conversation. Even think about your prayer. How often do you just go and sit in God's presence without, okay, God, and good morning, and here's my list of what I need and what? The pause, the silence. Because how can God's not going to fight you. Again, God's not going to fight you to speak to you. And often we are not quiet enough. We're not quiet with ourselves internally. That is why contemplative practices such as like meditation, we do that a lot now over the past couple of years, even yoga. And I said this last week, and I grew up learning as a Christian that yoga was bad and stuff. But man, I often hear God most in yoga or doing those types of things because it's the slowing down. You have to focus on your breathing, breath work, meditation. All of these things are ways in which you're quiet enough. The world is quiet enough. Things are quiet enough that if God wants to speak, God could. But we can take pauses too. I imagine that many of us don't breathe deeply. Like when you start, you realize that you're like, your chest is tight. Even a breath in a conversation. I've legit been in an argument and it's pissed the other person off, but it kept me from going. I have started meditating in a crazy conversation, just like, and breathing. I'm breathing, right? Because otherwise you're going to die. So the notion that you can stop just because someone wants to go into a war and a fight with you don't mean that you have to. You can stop. You can breathe. You can pause. Sometimes I've sat across from someone and just been like, why are you yelling at me? Why are you yelling at me? Why are you yelling? There's so many different ways in which you can stop. Like I said, I can get petty about. You have to know your own limits, right? I don't like circular conversations. They drive me bananas. I don't like talking about the same thing over and over again, and I don't want to repeat it 500 times. Like you see the side of my lip curling up, it is a pet peeve. So if I know that after like an hour of talking about the same thing, that's when petty comes out. Petty label. I devolve as a human being. So I will warn somebody, like, my cap for this, my capacity is an hour. So I'm not one of those people in a conversation where people are like, we need to resolve this and we need to talk about it all night until it's worked out. Not me. Not me. I can't do it. But I will say that, I will stop and be like, I need to take a minute. I need to take 20 minutes and I will be back and I'm going to go breathe. You always have that right. You always have that right to stop something and kind of be like, oh, okay. Because when it's about, when you're like, I'm about to read this person for filth. But is that in the best interest? I've done it with text. I do. I'm not going to tell people all my tricks, but they're real things. They work. I used to have an angry email draft folder. Just don't really send it. Don't put anybody in the to line. But sometimes I don't give my first reaction on an email. I will be like, and get it out. And then I will edit my email. I'm like, okay, no, you can't say it. No, can't. No, gotta erase that. Nope, throw that away. Or I will just discard the whole email, right? But it gets it out, not at the person. And then I can say what I really want to say, because I'm not at the point to just not feel it or think it. That's the next step, to just not let things rile you up. But I'm not there. I probably need like at least 16 more months of therapy before I can do that. But I am much better. Let's see. Ty East. You have found yourself being silenced, just not speaking or saying anything because it seems like your words cut to the bone marrow of a person, or your word is gospel. Yes. The reality is that if people hold you in high regard, it matters what you say. It may not be fair. You may not like it, but that is the reality of it. What I say, I am a human being, right? I'm just Des. Like most people, I'm Des. But in a role as a pastor, what I say matters. So how people regard you in your life, it matters. And so what you say and how you say it, and sometimes that's frustrating, but baby, that's what comes with the call. If you are called to be a leader, if you ever you can't ask God for certain things. And I'm not saying you did, but you can't say, oh, God, enlarge my territory, or God, I want to be a leader, or God, this, and only want the easy parts of it. That also means that there's a responsibility. There's a way in which you may have to govern yourself. There may be some things, and it's not being fake, right? It's just being like, I have to be mindful of these things because of that, if, and it comes with the territory. Now, if you don't want to be important in people's lives, I mean, I don't know how you would adjust that, and I'm sure that's not what you want, right? But the reality is that because people take seriously your words, and that may be part of what you are called to do in this life, you have to be a little bit more mindful than sister so-and-so or brother so-and-so who just seems like they can say whatever they want with no consequences. Lorianne, you're right. Like oftentimes God isn't going to yell over anyone or anything. And honestly, I feel like the world is mad loud right now. The world is so loud and crowded, and noise pollution and all these things that in order to hear God, you got to get real quiet, real quiet. I'm not done. I will be done in 10 minutes and then I'll come to you. Okay. Go lay down. I know your head hurts because you don't feel good. So I need you to go lay down. I'm gonna come check on you in a minute, or go get some water if you need it. Okay. All right. I love you. Yes, noise pollution. It's so loud. I had to go to the Berkshires last Saturday or Friday. And I was astonished at how it was like quiet. And I was just like, you could hear anything. And that's where I think God is. We have to be able to even silence ourselves enough. 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. Oftentimes, by the time I've gone on a prayer call or any of those things, I've already meditated in the morning. I've already done those things, sometimes at night, just to find some sense of quiet. Thais, you said, I've learned to listen to people when they call me to vent, and when they're finished talking, I will ask them if they want me to address it or give my opinion. Yes, and sometimes you can't let people call and vent to you. Sometimes you can't. Because sometimes you can get wrapped up. Like, how many people has let someone vent and all that energy? Now that person feels better and they have now left you with the heap of the mess. So I've also had to, you have to articulate when I can't be the repository for that. Like, I don't have the capacity to listen. I will tell my mom, I can't do it right now. Maybe later, or can you call me tomorrow? Or I'm just not in the space or place. Because then if you don't care for you, who cares for you? And it's also venting. I mean, there's a fine line between venting and gossiping. I am not saying that that's what they're doing with you, Thais. I'm just using these to kind of universalize for everybody. But the notion that if everyone's always coming to you and then this and this and this, that might be because you're a listening ear to things that maybe you should not be giving your ear to, just depending. Yes, Veronica, yoga does help, because yoga for me forces me to be in a moment, because I'm like, when am I supposed to be inhaling or exhaling? Wait, and I'm supposed to breathe for this moment. Like, you're so focused on what you're doing that moment. And sometimes I'd be like just trying to focus on living, because that stretch, it feels like my whole soul is being taken out of me, because like I can't, it hurts that I have to be focused in the moment, right? And so we have those types of things focus us. That's why things like meditating, it helps you focus on just what the moment is. You're right, AQ, circular conversations. But it's life. You say, if I tell you Victoria is coming out, my family friends know to walk away. That's my Simone. That's my middle name. I'm like, oh, she's coming. Hide your kids, hide your wife, hide everybody, please. Because but I try to like recognize that in myself and, adjust. It does not always happen, but it does a lot. Okay, let's see. Thais, you've had people become offended when you don't speak, or if you take a deep breath. It's kind of like people find it offensive. So what? Is it more offensive than being cursed out? I don't think so. Like, I'd rather you be and and they can fill it in whatever they want. I'm like, I'm breathing, right? I need a moment. Sometimes it'll be like, I'm taking in what I'm trying to hear you. I'm taking in what you're saying. You can say things like, I have a lot of feelings showing up for me about what you're saying, and I'm trying not to project those things on you. I've said all manner of things to let folk know, like, but that is better than some, at least on your end. Maybe you can't stop folks being offended, but are you going to walk away feeling better knowing, okay, well, I breathed and I paused and I did not say the 700 things I wanted to say, and I didn't cause permanent injury? Because again, them being mad that you were silenced is that's short term. You can have a conversation about that and be like, look, I was breathing. I'm trying to work through my own stuff. I'm trying to get better about being a good listener, yada, yada, yada. And if someone can't understand that, they don't want to understand. That is better than you saying whatever it is because they don't like the silence, or they're uncomfortable with silence, and then you cause permanent injury. That's not better. But some people are just uncomfortable with silence. A lot of people are, that they're always trying to fill in the awkward pauses. No, we're just going to let it be quiet for a second. And that's okay. Like, I just needed to be quiet. Sometimes I'm like, I'm trying to gather my thoughts. I'm trying to figure out what to say. There are lots of ways. Lori, and you've let people vent and had a stomach ache. Yeah. I call them spiritual vampires. You ever have someone just come and say all this stuff to you, and then afterwards you're tired? You feel like your whole soul is gone after being in their presence. And so if I know that, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give them like 15 minutes, or I'm not gonna let them in my home, or I'm gonna do whatever. And you can't let everybody have access to you like that. You just can't. Because then you're zapped, and then who's real feeling you? Nobody. Right. And Thais, you didn't ask for none of it. It is what it is. I didn't ask to be a pastor, but I am. Like, it's like, you didn't ask, but you're going to either walk into the calling or what God's called you to do, or you're not. And you're going to take everything that comes with it, or you're not. But it's not a Burger King. Like, you can't have it your way and be like, I'm gonna just take this part of the calling and not this part. Like, because it's also growth opportunities for us, right? When we're looking and something keeps showing up, oftentimes we have to look and be like, all right, what is the opportunity for me to grow and to be a better version of myself, to be ever evolving? So often the opportunities in our lives give us that placement to allow us to kind of evolve, grow into what we need to. Yes. Yeah. And sometimes, yeah, you do have to walk away. Now, what I try not to do is just walk away, like mid-sentence, right? Because that could be offensive too. Again, most of what we do is, it's 5%, I believe, what we say, and it's like 90%, 95% is nonverbal. So I think we need to communicate. I'm hearing what you're saying. I'd love to continue this conversation, but I need a moment right now because I'm being emotionally flooded. It's a real thing biologically. If you get too much stuff, you actually can't process. We often talk about fight and flight, but often it's fight, flight, or freeze. So some of us, we ready to get in. We want to argue, want to boom, boom, boom. Some of us like want to retreat. I don't want to talk about anything. And then some of us freeze. We're just like, so you have to identify how you are in communicating. And based on that, you can set up your standard of, okay, this is when I know that I'm going to do this, or I may need to do this because generally we are going to react a certain way. Yeah, sometimes other people's things do trigger you in the middle of your conversation with them. And so it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I need a moment, or something else is happening for me. It's not you, or I don't know what it is, or I'm finding myself getting real angry. I'm getting so mad. So I need a moment. Girl, you were the other one. Go check on your sister. I'm gonna come
But
out.
the tablet's off. The TV is not on.
So then get a book or color, or get one of the 500 toys just because the tablet died. I told you when it died, it's done. So go get something else for these few minutes. I'm actually not going to get up to go turn on the TV when I'm already stopping right now, and they probably laughing at me for talking to you right now. Don't laugh. It's not funny. Go get a book and practice your sight words. No. Sorry. Any other day. Radical truth. That's a name, right? It's important to know yourself and honestly assess how the people in your life make you feel. Now, not make you feel. Pastor Mike talked about words. And so no one can make you feel any way. You feel that way. So I even try again with my kids to be like, you better stop, or you're going to make me put you on timeout. No, they're not making me do anything. They're 5. Like, I am a person in control. So we even saying things like someone is making you gives them the power, right? So they aren't making you feel that way. You feel that way based on what has been said or what is happening, but how you feel is a choice, right? Or it's a giving in. That is a whole dance with yourself, right? So it's not, when we say someone else made us do that, because we know what it's like on the other end. If you've ever been, let's just say, like, if you've ever been in any type of abusive situation and someone's like, well, you made me do that. No, I didn't, right? It was a choice made, right? And so we have to be able to own our choice. Even if we got angry, we got upset, we feel this way, but no one has the right to, no one makes you feel, we feel a way. And so again, it's those small things. That's my therapist be kicking my behind about the small ways in which we're mindful of what we say. But let's get to the other point. Maintaining relationships because of titles or length of time doesn't honor you or the people. It doesn't. I've used this thing 500 times, and then we're going to be ending in a moment. But the temple, I've used this example before. It's an actual exercise you can do if you know how the temple in the Old Testament is comprised, and you've heard this. If you've heard it before, you could probably recite it. There is the outer courts, the inner courts, and the Holy of Holies, right? As you know, only the priests and only certain people could be in the Holy of Holies. Then you have your inner courts where some folks go, and the outer courts where most people can go. Right? So with you, radical truth, it doesn't mean that you have to move. Some people you have to move out of your life, right? But some people, it's about placement. As one of my former mentors showed me, only people who are helping you get to wherever the next place you're trying to go in your life should be in your holies of holies. So I have friends I may know for 20 years, but in this season with what I'm trying to do, you're in the outer courts. It don't mean we're not friends, but I have to adjust because you are not able to help me get to where I'm trying to go, and not in a way that's usury, but you're sucking me dry, or I can't do this, or this is not helpful for me. This is not helpful for the relationship. So versus thinking that you have to kick people out of your lives, and some people you have to do that with, how are they being adjusted in that season? That means someone who's in the outer courts in another season may end up in the inner courts, or they may go in the outer courts, or they may be in the holy of holies, but you adjust people seasonally based on where you are. And then it's not about titles or length. It's, again, you're centering yourself, not what they need, but what you need for your life. I'm glad that you love my honesty. Thank you. And you're right. It is absolutely not Burger King. And right, Lorianne, freeze, right? Yeah, everyone could probably write whether they fight, flight, or freeze. And knowing that, it doesn't mean you adjust it or change it, but knowing how you respond amidst conflict helps you adjust. There's this book called Crucial Conversations. I never can remember the author, but if you Google it, you'll find it. I think it has red on it. It also talks about some of these things. Thais, you said, and we're going to wrap up. There's a Christian skit on Instagram where the young lady speaks about the protecting your energy. I've adopted content from the skit. I don't have capacity. Oh, I'm quick to, it'll make it. And I have got plenty of people mad being like, I don't have the capacity. That's like one of my favorite sentences. I don't have the capacity for that, because, and recognizing when someone else doesn't have the capacity. Because other people, you can't make someone be in a place just because you want them to. So understanding that, like for me, my capacity to do a lot is, I don't know, it's a pretty big cup. Somebody else is on a half a teaspoon of capacity, and I'm going to run myself ragged wanting them to be at the same capacity to do anything, a level of maturity, how much work they can do, how they can show up. How you manage your own expectation is understanding the capacity of the people around you, right? Understand, like, that person doesn't function at the same capacity as me. So like why am I going to ask someone to run a marathon who can't do a relay? Like you don't do that. And so we have to understand, again, how we can also be mindful of other people's capacity, so we're not putting them at an expectation that is actually unfair for them. Veronica, you only keep your ride or die people in your inner circle. You change your cell phone because of the negative energy and you feel 100% better. You're like, boop, can't find me. But sometimes you have to do that. I've gone dark before. Like I've texted my mama and a few friends and been like, I'm turning off my cell phone because like I can't. I will check in with you once a day so you know that I'm alive, but nobody else is gonna be able to find me. And yeah, and if they need something, they'll text you. And I've done that for a few days when I feel like things are getting too loud, or I'll put myself on social media, like hiatus, like you could check it on a Sunday for 15 minutes. Like I will put rules in place when I start feeling things are like too much. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Yes, absolutely, Thais. That's a good note to end on. You're learning to meet people at their capacity, and everybody even may not even have the ability to speak the kind words, right? And just because they can't doesn't mean that you don't. Just because they're maiming doesn't mean that you should, because you may be at a different level of emotional maturity and what God is calling you to do. And God ain't going to come to you and be like, and you're going to be like, but so-and-so, but I'm not talking to so-and-so. This is about where I'm trying to take you, because so-and-so, you want so-and-so to have your blessing? You want so-and-so, you want the same life as so-and-so? No, what I'm calling and requiring you to do requires you to show up in a particular type of way. And yes, you may have to fight to get there, but you want the other things on the other side of that. And some of that comes like, what's the scripture that talks about, you should have been on meat by now, but you're still on milk. So don't be arguing with milk folk who are still spiritually drinking bottles, and you want to drink a bottle too, when you should be eating full-blown steak spiritually. That's not cute. right? So we have to work. We have to work to get to the place that God is requiring of us, or that we're even requiring of ourselves, because we're worth it. We're worth being the best versions of ourselves, and we're worth whatever is attached to being that better version of themselves. So yes, it was good to see y'all. I am going to tend to my kids who actually, they're doing pretty good for having the flu. Yes, but yes, milk to meat. That is a scripture in the New Testament that I can't remember right now. But you can, again, look that up. You can read the First Kings text 19:11 through 14. Pastor Mike preached from Proverbs 15:4. I gave a lot of scriptures. And we will be back next week. Well, you can't pass the mantle. I'm sure Jesus wanted the cup to come from him too, Thais. Like, you playing around today. Don't make me fuss at you. Jesus was like, if this cup could pass, no. So you can't pass the mantle, so now you got to just watch what you say and how you say it. Okay, you're welcome. Good night, y'all. Love you. Look forward to connecting with you soon. Yep. Have a great night. Some gingers.
A powerful human being, magnificent in your making. You're too beautiful